Thank you for this. Thank you for this nice introduction, Binua. So first, I would like to thank Binua and Nathalie for organizing this nice seminar and to share with everybody, I would say, in the on the world these seminars. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. And so I will talk today about X-ray, of course, because I'm working on a synchrotron, but not only, and on the study of which will be used to study soft interfaces. So the outline of my talks, as Oleg has done 1 month ago, I have gathered 2 of my presentations, and at the end, I will talk about my beamline. So first, I will start with semi-fluorinated alkanes. Then I will talk about the metallic nanostructure formation using X-ray. And at the end, I hope to have enough time to explain you why I put this image of the, I say, real world Sirius, the star, and explain you why I put this image. So let's start with the semi-fluorinated alkanes. So semi-fluorinated alkanes are very simple molecules. In fact, it's alkanes, where some of the hydrogen atoms are replaced by fluorine, and in order to form a D block with a hydrophobic, rigid fluorinated block, which is also lipophobic, meaning that it doesn't like the other part of the molecule, the normal hydrogenated part, which is only hydrophobic. Thus, due to the strong dipole and due to the difference in cross-section, this molecule self-assemble very easily in solution or even in the liquid phase in many phases, and there is a lot of review about that. I put one here of 2011, and it forms a lot of different structures. These molecules initially were synthesized by chemists for an initial interest, which is blood substitute, because the fluorinated chains can carry oxygen, and the hydrogenated chains enable in vivo compatibility. But due to some problems in some clinical tests, this first interest decreases, and now there is much other interest, such as the nanostructure templates or stabilizer for formation of other systems, in vivo oxygen magnetic resonance imaging probes, and also, and this is good, I would say, because this is a real application. It's now available as eyes drops for eyes disease treatment. This is this Novartis drug, which is commercially available. But for a physicist, it's a very interesting molecule, since in fact, despite the total hydrophobicity of the chain, there is no hydrophilic part in the molecule. These semi-fluorinated alkynes are known since GAINs to form monolayer at the air-water interface. For example, but up to the starting of the study, this molecule were mainly studied in mixture with other molecules, mainly due to the application in biology. And for example, some time ago, we made this experiment when the semi-fluorinated alkynes is mixed with phospholipids, and we prove that there is some vertical phase separation upon compression in the monolayer. But at this time, there was very few studies about the structure of pure SFA monolayers without a mixture with another molecule. The first studies at this time were, in fact, the first one was the one of Rice, which made some grazing incident X-ray diffraction and some surface pressure isotherms, and he proposed a model for the organization of a pure monolayer, which is called the FH model, where the fluorinated chains are gathered in one layer above an hydrogenated layer which lie on the water surface. This organization explain, of course, the grazing incident X-ray diffraction, where a peak is measured of the fluorinated chain organization. But Elabed and collaborators have made some X-ray reflectivity and propose another model where you have, in fact, 3 layers, 2 external layers of fluorinated chains with an intermixed layer of hydrogenated chains in the middle. So we have different models, but all these models suppose an homogeneous layer. But after transferred on the substrate from the air-water interface, the first study was done by Kato and collaborators and published in Langmuir in 1998, and where they have done some atomic force microscopy after transfer on a semi-fluorinated fatty acid this time. Here there is an hydrophilic group, of, the acid group. And he saw that the layer was not homogeneous, but there was a lot of domains on the surface of nanometric size. For the pure semi-fluorinated alkanes without the acid moieties, Malum and co-workers have done exactly the same experiment after transfer on solid substrate, and they have shown that there is also with semi-fluorinated alkanes domains on the surface of the silicon wafers. This was interpreted with the presence of hemimicelles on the surface. Each domain is an hemimicelle that you can draw like that with a size of 30 nanometers typically. But what is the real structure on water? Because you cannot say that after transfer you can have some reorganization because the two substrates are not the same. This is why we have done grazing incident small angle X-ray scattering, GSAX, directly on the surface of water. So some of you may recognize the former Troika beamline. And with this experiment, we had the surprise to see that at small angle, the system exhibits several diffraction peaks, at least 12, that can be exactly indexed on an hexagonal lattice, which parameter is 33.6 nanometer. So this is this lattice parameter is really in agreement with the domain size that you can find by atomic force microscopy. However, the organization has a better quality since here, and I will go back to that a bit later, the domains are rather disorganized on the solid substrate, which is not clearly the case on the liquid. This nanodomain's presence is very robust against the shape of the molecule, meaning the length of the different blocks. This is the different block we have tested here, and we have always diffraction peaks. The structure is more or less organized, and the distance of the size of the domain evolve. And they're also stable upon compression. At any surface pressure, you always have this structuration. Inside the domains, the X-ray can also help you to know how the molecules are organized. And this is well known since RISE that there is diffraction peaks at wide angle. Here are for 3 different D blocks, where the hydrogenated chains evolve from 16 to 18 to 20. We have always one diffraction peak at 12.5 nanometer minus 1, which correspond to the fluorinated part close packing. This is well known. And we have a second peak, which is almost visible for the shorter chains, but very clear for the longer ones, which can be attributed to the hydrogenated part, which appears here for the 20 carbon length hydrogenated part tilted. That means that the hydrogenated part fixes the distance between the molecule, and then the hydrogenated one adapt to be the more organized they can with this distance which is fixed. So in fact, we have a second level of organization in the system. At wide angle, you saw the organization of the molecule. At small angle, you see the organization of the domains. The domain shape, and moreover, what happened on the solid substrate, there is a question, because when you make a Langmuir blood jet deposition, the transfer is very poor, and as I already said, the organization of the domain has not the same quality than on liquids. Thus, and this can be seen by this Fourier transform here of the image. Then we try some other solution to obtain the same quality of organization. And we succeed to do that by an alternative method, which is spin coating. In fact, when you spin coat droplets of semi-fluorinated alkyne solution in chloroform, provided that first you hydrated very well the substrate, you can have, just after the spin coating, you can see this pretty image where the domains are very well organized, and this is proven by this Fourier transform of the image. If you look at higher resolution, you will have some information about the shape of the domain. In fact, you see that the domain are hexagonal with faceted edges, meaning that here it's not vertical but with slope. And in between two domains, we have a hump that we can interpret as lying molecules. So the core of the domain is made of upright molecules, and the bottom and the hump in between the domain can be due to lying molecules. And last point, and I will come back on that at the end of my of this part. You can see a hole at the middle of the domains. So what is the shape on water? Because again, you cannot exclude that something happened during the transfer. So this is why, again, we go back to GSAXS. And if you look to the experimental spectrum, you see that the diffraction peaks are not located in plane. So the maximum is not IQZ equals 0, but the position increase, the maximum of the intensity increase with the value of the Q in plane. So this was, again, a kind of surprise. But if you try to modelize that, so we have used the Born-Again GSAXS simulation software, you can find at this address, which use a general DWBA approximation. So, of course, we try the first model, but this is very easy, and you don't need any software to know the result. If you take the first model with flat disk, so one hydrogenated disk with a fluorinated disk up, this sketch is as the right scale. Of course, the maximum intensity are in plane. So this is expected, but this is not what we are measuring. So with the inspiration of what we see by AFM on solid substrate, we tried the second model, which is a truncated cone with, again, with two cones, one fluorinated and one hydrogenated one. And if you look at the maximum, so this is the image is a simulation. The red dots are the experimental maximum, and the line is the maximum of the simulation. So you see that we are almost done, that the maximum position evolve and change and increase with QXY, but if you cannot achieve to really reproduce the same slope with this shape. I have to say that this is not a fit. This is a calculation with most of the parameters coming from, so the size of the cone are given by the parameter of the lattice measured by GSAXS, and the other parameters are coming from AFM. So it's just a calculation. There is no fit except for the angle here of the cone. So you can try and fit the angle. You will not be able to reproduce the slope. So the last model, and again, we take inspiration from the AFM, where you have a hump in between the domains. You put a corona of lying molecules around the cone, and then you are able to rather reproduce very well, okay, not the oscillation, but you reproduce the slope. So we prove that there is something rather flat, because we try to change the height, and then you cannot reproduce very well the data. It exists something rather flat around the domain of upright molecule, and the height we found is in agreement with lying molecules. And we tried also to change from circular domains to hexagonal. It doesn't change so much the shape, so we cannot discriminate for that. So having lying molecules around the domain explain a lot of remaining questions about the behavior at higher scale of the system. First, we had a discrepancy between the macroscopic area per molecule and the area of the molecular unit cell. And you can see that by comparing the isotherm, so surface pressure versus area per molecule of the semi-fluorinated alkyne in red and of a fat perfluorinated alcohol in blue. You see that the limit area are not the same. So if you make a calculation with the proportion of lying molecule you deduce from the previous GSACS simulation, you explain very well this discrepancy and quantitatively. Same thing for the compressibilities. We have different compressibilities. And in fact, we see that the macroscopic and the domain lattice compressibilities are due to the non-organized lying molecules. So this point explains a lot of different things. Last experiment, we went a little bit beyond collapse, meaning to see the stability of this domain, which is rather strange because at one point you can expect that everything merges and you have an homogeneous layer. In fact, this is not the case. You can compress to the collapse, you always have the structuration of the layer. And we went further, compressing the layer much beyond collapse. So on the isotherm, you have a plateau. That means that you have a transition. And then the surface pressure increase again. And so this can be interpreted, and the area per molecules are in agreement with that we have a transition between a monolayer and a trilayer. We made GSACS at the different points along this curve, and you have always the diffraction peaks and the structuration. But that you can see that for the last curve, when the trilayer, there is a mix here between the colors. But at the higher pressure, so when you have complete three layers, the intensity is lower here. And this can be interpreted by the fact that the nanostructuration is now below the B layer, and the B layer has not the structuration. So the first layer in contact with water, there is organized domain. And for the two layers which has above, you have an homogeneous layer. So we can summarize this by saying that on polar substrates, you have nanostructuration because we have it on liquid water. In the literature, you can find that some people have worked with PSPO, a copolymer, and they have nanostructuration. The semi-fluorinated can lie on the PSPO layer. On hydrated silicon substrate, we have it. This is what I have shown. And on liquid crystals, also, it was shown by Moran and collaborator. On non-polar substrate, we didn't see this because on dry silicon wafer, the nanostructuration disappears. And on the semi-fluorinated alkyne itself, it doesn't give the nanostructuration too. So there is something in the interaction between the dipole of the semi-fluorinated molecule and the dipole of the substrate, usually water, because that could explain this nanostructuration. To go further, some colleagues of us, of the University of Lisbon, has tried to make molecular dynamics simulation of this system. So they put water, they put the molecule in the water, and they make the simulation. And they succeed to reproduce the shape of the domain. I have to say that the number of molecules is not yet the same number that we have in domains. But we have this cone, in fact, here. You see, in fact, if looking at the internal structure of the domain, that in fact it forms a kind of rotating system here. And if you calculate the diffraction spectrum of such an object, you will find this figure here with two peaks, the peaks of the fluorinated chains, and the peak of the hydrogenated wad, which is here in dashed line here, which reproduce rather well what we measure with diffraction on our system. So this is the first approach to describe this system. I would say we, but in fact, this is the people of Lisbon that are doing the work. So they have to increase the number of molecules and to see what happens when we reach the point where the domain is complete. A last slide I want to show about this system is some new experiment we have done, because all the experiment I show was done at the ESRF on former Troika beamline. And we start to take some interest on this system, and we tried at Soleil on the Sirius beamline to make, to follow, in fact, the spreading of the monolayer, meaning that we deposit the monolayer in chloroform, and we measure the diffraction, the GISAC spectrum during this solvent evaporation. This gives this film when you see that the peaks are already there at the beginning of the life of the monolayer, and that you see that the peaks are changing and evolving with time during the evaporation of the solvent. So for just a very crude experiment for the moment, we are just starting to interpret it and to first to analyze them. And but this is rather interesting and renews interest in this system for us, I would say. So you see that the peaks here have already changed a lot, and we are almost at the end. And at one point, nothing more will happen. Finish. Okay. So apparently there is some pre-existing micelles or structure in the spreading solution. This is a question that now we will try to solve. So as a conclusion, I will not repeat everything, but first I will say that without in situ GISACs on the surface of water, the controversy between the different structures proposed would not have been solved. So this technique is very interesting, and this time-resolved GISAC seems to be able to give some new information. So now I will switch to the second part of my talks, which is about metallic nanostructure formation with X-ray. So what we are talking about, in fact, we are talking about radiolysis or radiolytic reduction. So for chemists, this is a very well-known technique. When you irradiate water with usually gamma ray or electrons, also visible light, but apparently chemists are not talking about too much about visible light because for them it's something else, but also X-ray, but it's very new. When you irradiate the water with this kind of irradiation, you will create some radicals in the solution, solvated electrons and radicals. So I simplified a lot the system. I put here a sketch coming from the review of Goreshian, where you see that things are a little bit more complex than what I said, but the spirit is there. So when you have some metal ions dissolved in the water, some of these radicals are reducive, meaning that from the, for example, for silver, the ion will react with the solvated electron, and you will have an atomic atom of silver that can further aggregate to form a metallic aggregates. However, some other radicals, like this one, it can react with the atomic silver, and you will go back to the ion. So we put also some quenchers. Usually it's just an alcohol that you put in the solution, and you will favor the reduction. So this step, this one will not happen, and you will only have this one, and then you can form nanometric metal aggregates. This is a very well-known techniques, mainly with gamma ray and electrons, that leads to a lot of nanoparticles. I will not talk about the interest of nanoparticles. I will talk a bit at the end. So our ideas was to form metal layer around organic self-assembled molds. These molds are charged, so they will attract the metal ions in the vicinity of the layer. And with the ion reduction, we can expect the formation of metal aggregates around the mold. This is something I sketch on these drawings. And we can use different kind of mold, and especially the self-assembled system coming from soft matter, because they are easy to form and control in solution. There is a huge diversity of shape, and the electrical charge can be controlled by pH, by ionic force, and so on. And we intend to use X-ray radiation because we are people coming from the X-ray community. So the first try is to prove that X-ray can do the same job as gamma ray and or electrons. So we try to irradiate a silver ion solution in this setup. So the solution in this small capillary here, the X-rays are coming from the back of the screen, going to us. And we put also a UV visible spectrometer to check what is happening in the solution. So with time, we have this UV visible spectroscopy spectrum. So we have several ones in 1 hour. At the beginning, there is nothing. And at the end, you have this peak, which is characteristic of the formation of metal, of silver metal nanoparticles. We measure in the same time the SAXS spectrum. We find this spectrum, which can be fitted with a very polydispersed sphere system. But the main proof of the formation of nanoparticles is the UV visible spectroscopy, and also this color yellow here that we have. Then we tried our techniques, that is trying to form nanoshell around organic micelles. So we take linoleic acid, we take silver ion, which is in solution in water, and we this time irradiate with gamma ray, and we wonder if we have formed silver nanoshells. So again, we made some SAXS. It was not the SRF from the D2AM beamline. So we have this spectrum here, which is fitted on this figure with simple colloids, and the fit does not work very well, or with a shell, which is this time a little bit better, but here we have a lot of polydispersity. So the radius, more or less, are 6.8 nanometer inside, and the external radius of the shell is 28 nanometer. We tried with some other solution, not exactly the same, to do some cryothem, and you find also this nanoshell here, but there is also some nanoparticles, so there is a mixture of the two inside the solution. But nevertheless, silver nanoshell formation through gamma radiolysis, the presence of organic micelles seems to work. There is no discussion, but we have a very huge polydispersity and size, and also presence of simple colloids. Since we are people from surface and from the Langmuir monolayer community, of course, we try to use these techniques on our system. So this was the X-ray surface radiolysis technique that we introduced to try to make the metallization of organic layers. So we take the simplest system, which is a behenic acid monolayer deposited on the solution of a silver solution, plus the ethanol. Reminds that you need a quencher to avoid the oxidation of the formed atoms. And since we are irradiating at grazing incidence, we irradiate a small volume by the evanescent wave, which is a few nanometer thick. And then we expect to locate the reduction to this irradiated volume and to form here a very thin metal layer. So we tried that. And we tried, and since we are on a synchrotron, we can follow everything by grazing incident X-ray diffraction, but also X-ray fluorescence. And then after that, we transfer the result on the silicon wafers. So at the beginning, so what we see here, we have the silver fluorescence intensity, so the amount of silver in the irradiation layer with time. So you see that we follow that during a long time, overnight, in fact. And at the beginning, of course, you have the classical diffraction of a silver Langmuir monolayer with the NN structure, very classical. With time, you see that the amount of fluorescence of silver increases, meaning that we have more and more silver at the interface. And then at the end, in the middle or at the end of this increase here, what you see is that you have the organic phase start to decrease a bit. The intensity of the organic phase is lower, but you have, this remaining peak here, but you have other peaks that appear in the spectrum, which seems to be due to the multi-layer. They are very intense, so we think they are due to silver, but it forms a 2D system. So the crystal of silver that is formed is oriented by the surface. At this point, we stop everything and we transfer on a silicon substrate. And we make this image here. When you see on very large plate like that, and if you make the cut, somewhere, for example, somewhere here, taking some holes. Here you have some holes and some other here. You have this cut here where you have, in fact, two thicknesses, an overall thicknesses of something like 7 nanometers, and another one which is 2.8 roughly. And so it seems rather clear that this 2.8 thickness is due to the organic layer, benic acid, and the other part here is due to the silver layer, and it's exactly 4.5 nanometer, which is the penetration depth of the X-ray. If you go further, if you continue to irradiate, you have this strange behavior of the fluorescence, but it's mainly rather flat, so you don't see any more evolution. But in the diffraction spectrum, things are changing. We have a 2D oriented system first, and then now you have beautiful rings of diffraction here, meaning that we have formed silver colloids. So you have, in fact, a two-step process. First, you have a 2D crystal formation, followed by 3D colloid formation. So in order to vary the molds, we have tried some other systems. For example, to solve one problem, which is a polydispersity at 3D in solution of the nanoshell we form, we think that this could be due to the fact that surfactant micelles are dynamics objects that can change in size and shape during time, during the irradiation. So in order to overcome this problem, we try to use frozen micelles of D-block copolymers, which are synthesized by Nadège Pantouskier and Patrick Perrin from the USPCI in Paris. So these polymers have a polystyrene block, which is hydrophobic, and a PDMA-EMA block, which in fact is a polyelectrolyte that is charged at acidic pH, which is positively charged. The advantage also of this system is that we can change the metal we are using. Since it's positively charged, we can try gold in the form of the this complex here, AuCl4. So first, before doing the irradiation, we have made some neutron scattering. So this was done at the laboratoire Léon Brillouin before the end of this facility. So this is the spectrum we have, classical SAN spectrum of polymer micelles. And what we have seen is summarized in these drawings. So at very low concentration of gold with regard to the monomer concentration, we have still micelle with a little bit of gold inside the corona. If you increase the concentration of gold, you then have more gold inside the corona. And when you reach the 1:1 ratio between gold and monomers, then the corona of the micelle shrinks, the polymer collapses, and then you have an almost dry corona without water, and the micelles start to aggregate. So we have some good news to try the X-ray radiolysis here around these frozen micelles. First, with some concentration, you have gold localized and trapped in the micelle corona, and the micelle structure is rather preserved despite the collapse of the corona at high concentration. So now we have tried the X-ray radiolysis. So we have done that on a classical SAXS beamline as the USRF on D2AM. We have started at high concentration, which is rather the more simple case. So at this concentration, what we saw, so this is all the SAXS spectrum with time. And the main figure is that we are losing the characteristic shape of the sacs of the micelles and it leads to a classical Q-4 decrease of the intensity. And we interpret that, since at this concentration there is no water in the micelle, to the formation of colloids outside of the micelle, but in the vicinity. In fact, the micelle are just here to locate the point where the nanostructure the nanoparticle will grow. So we have formation out of the micelle. More interesting is that at low concentration, the behavior is completely different. And you see that with time, even if the system is evolving, the shape of the micelle is rather conserved. And we deduce from that that the nanoparticles are formed now in the micelle, in fact. So you have a collection of nanoparticles, but stuck into the micelle. So even if we are not really forming a real nanoshell, we are not so far from that. And we have a very tunable system to form where we want the nanoparticles. Of course, since these PS-PDMA copolymers can be spread at the surface of water, we have tried that also with our X-ray radiolysis, surface radiolysis. So this is the isotherm. So in pure water, the isotherm of the polymer is rather classical with an increase of pressure at small area per molecule. And if you put that on a solution of gold ions, you have this isotherm, which is rather not very beautiful. In fact, this in fact due to the fact that you are forming this by Brewster angle microscopy, you see that you are forming this iceberg type monolayers, which are very, very rigid. So in fact, the pressure you are measuring is not really a physical pressure. And we suspect, in fact, a collapse of the PDMA chains on the substrate, on the surface. So, of course, we have done some neutron reflectometry. So for that, we use reflectometer Figaro at the ILL in Grenoble. And we have this beautiful neutron reflectometry spectrum. So it's RQZ at the power of force in Y and QZ in X. And you see that it evolves with compression. So we have fitted all these curves, and what we have deduced from that are this scattering length density of the polymer with the depth. So of course, you have floating on the surface of water the polystyrene block, which is insoluble. So it anchors the polymer at the substrates. And we have then two layers. The first layer in contact with the polystyrene layer is a PDMA layer with gold inside, but without water. And then we have some chains which are protruding in the solution with this time water. So for this layer without water, of course, we cannot make the radiolysis because you cannot form radicals since there is no water. But we can expect to succeed to do something here in this layer, since there is water. So this is the result after one night. So you see, after one night of irradiation with X-ray, you see this line here, which width corresponds, of course, to the width of the beam. You see here that we have a silicon wafer ready to be swept just below to deposit this layer on substrate. First thing, of course, we are following that with total reflection X-ray fluorescence. We have with gold, we are rather lucky to do fluorescence because we have several peaks to play. So you have these peaks here, those peaks at high energy, but you have also the M lines at lower energy, and you saw also the chlorine. And this is very interesting, in fact, because it will prove that we have radiolysis or not. And in fact, for this polymer to be ionized, to have the positive charge on the polymer, you need to be at pH equal 2. Then you need to put some acids in the system. So first, usually we are using chlorhydric acid. So we put some chlorhydric acid in the subphase, and we measure the evolution of the chlorine and the gold at the interface. And nothing happened, in fact, just a little decrease, but the two signals are equivalent, and we cannot say that there is something happening in this system, except a small decrease that we don't explain so much, but okay. But then, in fact, we have also chlorine in this, so we don't like to have two sources of chlorine here. So we switched to nitric acid, and this time we were very happy to see this evolution of the fluorescence. So be careful. Here, in blue, you have the chlorine. So you see something maybe, but the intensity, you are just doubling the intensity here, and with a very strange fluctuation. But if you look at the gold intensity, we are here almost at 1, and we are going at the end to 30. So when the intensity of the gold is multiplied by 30, the intensity of the chlorine remains rather constant. That means that in fact you have decomposed this complex here, and you only increase the quantity of gold at the interface and not the quantity of chlorine. That means that the radiolytic reduction is working. So we can expect to measure something in diffraction. And this is the case, in fact. What we are here in this Q intensity map, QZ, QXY, you see two rings here that you can integrate azimutally, and you will find the Q value exactly of gold clusters. We have the 111 peak of gold and the 200 here. We can also see here a vertical road here, which could correspond to a surface-oriented structure. Here, you can measure also the kinetics of formation of the gold nanoparticle here. And you can plot the intensity of the 111 peak along with the gold fluorescence intensity, and you see that the two match rather nicely. So we have everything. Last thing, as I told you, we make the deposition of this nice layer here, and we look with atomic force microscopy at what we have on the surface, and what we see is that we have everywhere colloids here, but also some nice pentagons here, which are platelets, which have a thickness of something like 16 nanometers, which are micron size. So we can, in fact, say that maybe this rod is due to the platelets, and of course, the two rings are due to the nanoparticles. So in fact, we are forming two different things at the interface. We are forming nanoparticles, but also platelets. And this was already so by irradiation with electrons of solution of gold. So this is not a real surprise for people working in this field. Last mold we have tried, this is very recent, in fact, it was a PhD of Eleni Brahim, which defended her thesis in December. So we are studying also ionic liquids. So this imidazolium-based ionic liquids, a very long chain here, for example, C20 imidazolium, associated with an anion, which is NTF2. These kind of molecules are forming more or less stable monolayers. So this is shown here by this isotherm, and you see that with very long chains, like the C20, the isotherm seem rather correct with an hysteresis, but not so important, like the one of the C18 or even the C16. Okay, below this number of carbon, with lower number of carbon, you have nothing. So you have no real Langmuir monolayer behavior. So we have made some X-ray reflectivity on this layer, and we have seen some nice transition between a mono here and a tri-layer. So this system are charged, so they can be a mold for gold layer formation by X-ray radiolysis, and we have tried that. So again, we have followed the chlorine and the gold fluorescence with time. And you see that if at the beginning the two curves have the same evolution, meaning that the radiolysis has not started, at one point they diverge. The gold is increasing continuously, and the chlorine is decreasing. So again, we are pretty sure that chemically the radiolysis occurs. If you look at the diffraction, again, the organic part, the ionic liquid part is decreasing. This is the spectrum at the end of the irradiation. And I forgot to tell you that this is a very low concentration of gold. High concentrations. No, low concentration, you will see. And you have, again, the two diffraction rings of the gold, 111 and 02, and we can also measure the kinetics of formation. We have tried at higher concentration, so now we have 20 more gold compared to one ionic liquid molecule. And then, if you look at the fluorescent, you see that you have fluctuations, mainly due to some 8 scan and so on the system. But the evolution are the same for the two atoms, gold and chlorine. So you have no decomposition of the cluster of the complex AuCl4 and then no radiolysis. And on diffraction, it is the same. You see that you have this lot of peaks this time, which we have no real explanation for the moment. In fact, we have two explanations. One is we have the usual structure of unique liquid at the air-water interface. The only thing is that the gold has replaced the NTF2 anion, or it is a superstructure, because we have some things which could be interpreted as superstructure. It's still under analysis. But what we are now very convinced is that if you have a strong binding of the ions on the organic layer, you have no radiolysis, no decomposition, and the radiolysis failed. So this is the indication that, in fact, to do this kind of experiment, we need a mean potential to extract the ion in the vicinity of the layer, but we don't need a strong link between the ion and the layer. So to finish with this thematic, I would say that X-ray radiolysis around organic molds for metal nanostructure formation is working. You can use a lot of different molds to do this, and start to be a lot of different people are doing that. And of course, from that, you have a lot of application. But you can object that you need a synchrotron to do that, which is not so easy and widespread in the world just to do fabrication. But if you compare the flux we are using, for example, in volume at D2AM, we have, after closing slits to have a beautiful beam to do SACs, you have 2 to the power of 10 to the power of 10 photons per second. Of course, this was before the upgrades of beamlines and ESRF. But the new laboratory sources that are coming, the CLS, the liquid jet source, you see that you have also 10 to the power of 10 photons per second. And for example, these people from the University of Virginia Commonwealth are using, to make synthesis of nanoparticles on graphene oxide, they are using a laboratory source, in fact. So it works, and you can use a laboratory source to that, but of course, you will maybe lose the in situ characterization, and since usually these sources are focused, you maybe need to switch to microfluidic systems to make the synthesis. And for example, the Japanese people have done the same job inside a microfluidic cell, with the advantage that the dose along the beam path is the same for the wall thickness, which is here 2 micrometers instead of millimeters in our system. This is the future of what we will do, is we will go to microfluidics. And for example, also there is this new paper just appearing in scientific reports when they have made, with our method, plasmonic nanostructure for photovoltaics. So lots of application, and we don't need a synchrotron to do the job. So now that I have shown that with X-ray we can do a lot of things, and sometimes they are mandatory to solve problems, I will give you some information about the beamline we have built at Soleil for this kind of system, but not only. And this is why I show always this image of Sirius, the star, which at naked eyes looks as one single star, but in fact it's a two-star system, Sirius A and B. And in fact, Sirius beamline is also 2 beamline in one, because we are working for soft, but also for hard surface and interfaces. We are making X-ray scattering, I talk a lot about, but also spectroscopy, and not only X-ray fluorescence, but also absorption spectroscopy. And we use tandem or hard X-ray between 1.1 and 13 kiloelectronvolts. So what, on the soft matter side, what are the thematics we are working on with our users? In fact, they are gathered in this circle. So we can start with fundamental research. For example, and we talk a bit, if I have still some time, about confined materials, and we have worked in a surface force apparatus. We are making, and this is known by most of you, 2D thermodynamics, for example, phase diagram of mixture of fluorinated and hydrogenated fatty acid at the air-water interface. We have also worked on, for example, and now we are switching to more applicative system on graphene oxide. on water, but also on pretend polymer and peroxide for the solar cell industry. Also, we made a lot of surface chemistry, for example, diacetylenic in situ polymerization. We also probe and characterize metamaterials. For example, here we work on gold nanoparticles structured into a polymer matrix to form metamaterials. So you can find some more information in this reference. And of course, as liquid surfaces beamline and Langmuir monolayer beamline, we have a lot of work on biomimetic systems to look at interaction between a model membrane, which is in fact a Langmuir monolayer. Of course, it's only half of the membrane, and potential antibiotics, for example, drugs or plastics, or I don't know, a lot of things. We have a lot of reference about that. I say that we have, in this soft matter side, we are very versatile in sample environments. Of course, we have a Langmuir trough, which can be equipped with a fluorescence detector here above or on the side. We can also work with a UV visible spectrometer in order, for example, to follow polymerization of diacetylene. We are making, of course, work on solid surfaces. So we just developed a new GWAX geometry setup to measure in one shot the whole spectrum. And of course, we're making GSAX, so on solid and liquid. And for the moment, the largest parameter we measured is 200 nanometers. And the same people who have done that have just proposed to measure up to 500. So we will try to go further. We host a roll printing system for this peroxide and the polymer deposition. So we follow with time in GWAX the deposition and the evaporation of solvents to form the peroxide structure. We host also a surface rheometer to see on Langmuir monolayer during shearing. We start to have some proposition and work on microfluidic cells. And I will talk later about the surface force apparatus. And we are making also standing wave fluorescence with Florent Malougy and Jean Dayan. And also we advance high temperature trough. On the hard interfaces side, we are working on semiconductors, nanoelectronics, of course, and photovoltaics. For that, we have a baby chamber, fully under vacuum, on which we can do several techniques. We also have, in collaboration with people from Grenoble, from the LMGP, built MOCVD atomic layer deposition reactor. You can have a sketch of the whole system here. And we have, since 2 years now, a new four-cycle diffractometer fully under vacuum. This diffractometer can be connected to the vacuum of the beamline. The beamline has no window, so we can work down to the aluminum edge at 1.4 kiloelectron volts. And with that, we are able to make most of the X-ray techniques for surfaces. We are making absorption spectroscopy, diffraction, reflectivity, absorption spectroscopy in diffraction conditions, GSAC, GWAX. And since recently, we made some coherent diffraction imaging. This is this paper published last year about that, with experiment done on the beamline. For that, the beamline is made as this, with this optics and source. So we have an helicoidal undulator to have this, to have photons between 1.1, in fact, I put here 1.4, but it's 1.1, up to 13 kiloelectron volts in the 3 polarization state. We have 2 monochromators. The first one, which is a classical silicon 111 DCM, double crystal monochromator, for linear polarization between 2 and 13 kiloelectron volts. After this one, we can remove the DCM and we can use an MGM, multi-layer grating monochromator, to preserve the circular polarization of the beam around 3 kiloelectron volts, because in fact with silicon crystals, you kill the vertical polarization due to booster angle at 3 kiloelectron volts. Then we have a mirror which is spherical for the MGM, but flat for the DCM and used for harmonic rejection. The second mirror is a bender, and we can focus the beam down to 100 micrometer, less if we lose flux. We have a third mirror to bend and focus the beam horizontally again to something like 100 micrometers. And we have the fourth mirror for deflection, and then we have also some XBPM and monitors, essentially diamond diodes, thick one for high energy and thin one for low energy. With that, we have a huge multi-purpose diffractometer with two configurations for the samples, a 6-axis tower to host very heavy things, up to 200 kilograms, and a kappa head, which has accuracy for crystallography, but of course with less weight on it. This is an example of the equipment we can mount of this. So you have here the long mirror trough, the fluorescence detector on it. So here we measure directly fluorescence. Solar slits plus position sensitive detector to measure grazing incidence diffraction. And we have a second diffraction arm here to measure GWAX, small angle, or we can put the Pilatus detector here at 4.5 millimeters for GSAX with the best Q min. Okay, if I still have 2 slides, we'll just quickly talk about surface force measurement and surface force apparatus. So this principle is known as Tabor-Israelishvili, where you can, using 2 cross cylinders in this geometry, you can measure using cantilever the force between these 2 surfaces when you decrease the distance down to contact. So you measure this distance with optical interferometry in white light, and you can have the accuracy between 2 angstroms up to 5, I think here it's nanometers, 15 nanometers. And we have a very good sensitivity in force. And okay, this technique is very well known. And we try to adapt it in collaboration with Patrick Ekishev from Strasbourg in France to make X-ray measurements on this system. So for that, we make, in fact, in principle, it's very simple. You just have to make a hole in the system. But of course, it's not so easy because you have all the difficulties of the SFA setup. We need to have no leaks in the cell. And of course, you need a very precise alignment of the beam with the contact point of the cylinder, meaning that you need to work with a 10 micron by 10 micron beam. So we can have this beam for the moment with lower flux, but in few weeks, I hope, but I think it will be months, we will have some refractive lenses to decrease the size of the beam. So we have some mirrors, optical mirrors, to have white lights to measure the distance between the surfaces, or X-ray to have the structure of the liquid which is confined in between these 2 surfaces. So this is the setup, general view, a more close view. So the X-ray are going like that. You have here the mirrors to see, to make the interferometric measurements. They can be put in or out. And this is more side view of the system. So the application, and I have almost finished, we have made, the first one is looking at surfactant solution confined between this mica surface. So the surfactants are known to absorb on the mica surface. Then the surfaces are now hydrophobic, and you expect repulsion between the 2 surfaces, and this is measured by SFA. But in some conditions, which are mainly very low concentration below the CMC of the surfactant, attraction is measured, and this was shown by Patrick some time ago. And in fact, this is due by correlation between charge fluctuation on the surfaces and a theory made by Albert Joner, which combines the free energy of Guy-Chapman with line tension, leads to a calculation to correlation between surfaces that should appear for a distance which are 10 nanometers, with correlation also of 10 nanometers. So we have done the experiment in the surface force apparatus with X-ray, and what we see is that we have diffuse scattering rings at very low separation, which position correspond to 12 nanometers. So in good agreement with the theory. And of course, we have varied the separation, and you see a little bit this peak moving, going to closer separation, and disappearing when you go to very large separation. So that's one application, which is not really a liquid surfaces system, but it's solid liquid interface. Okay. So I'm finishing here. So just all the people that worked with me, I will mainly mention the students and the postdocs that work on all this system with us. Just citing also my 3 colleagues on the beamline, Arnaud Emerlet, that is taking care with me of soft matter, and Gianluca Ciatto, which work on the hard matter side. Of course, we are collaborating, but he made the local contact for this experiment, and Nicolas Aubert, the technician. And these 3 people which are associated to the beamline in close contact. So Patrick Ekishev, of course, for the surface force apparatus, Michel Goldman for all the liquid surface measurement, and Hubert Rennevier on the hard matter side. And all the other people, also the people who are making the molecules, of course, they are very useful. And the local contact where we are making experiments on other places. So thank you for your attention. If you want to follow us on Twitter, this is the account.